Good afternoon, YouTube. So today is the second part of a video that I'm making on Dr. Peter Moore, pardon me, Dr. Patrick Moore. The first part of the interview, I covered about 8 minutes of the clip. So this is the second part, and thank you for watching.
The problem, here's how I put it. If we stopped using fossil fuels tomorrow, there wouldn't be a tree left on this planet in 2 years.
Because we need them for fuel.
Because we'd have to burn them for fuel.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that.
No, we don't. So, you've spent your entire life in this. You are a scientist. You have a PhD in ecology. You've thought about and focused on carbon for more than 25 years now as a focus of your work. Does it not cause you frustration that even you keep running into so many obstacles in getting people to listen to what you have to say?
Well, what has happened is a new cult religion has been born on the issue of climate. I think it might, some people say it's because Christianity and the other religions have been, people sort of go, no, there isn't actually an old guy with a white beard.
Mm-hmm.
This is all bunk, right? And so secularism has come to rule.
Away.
But people, it seems that people still need a religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so the trouble with the climate issue is it's not only a new religious movement, it's a new political movement, and the scientific establishment, because of the huge taxpayer money going into it, is totally bought into it, and so is the political establishment, and so are the business. I mean, even the big oil companies are pandering to the politicians on this subject. The biggest problem we have on climate is the fossil fuel companies themselves will not defend themselves and will not even listen to an alternative explanation of this situation.
This is our second break, but I'm anxious to get back to this. We'll be back in a moment.
So I just wanted to quickly comment. I very much, it's very interesting the point that Dr. Patrick Moore is making there, that because of our secularism in society, that there was a need to still establish a religion, so to speak. And it's incredible to me because it's actually consistent with how the movement operates. It is a very devout, a very value-oriented, so essentially whenever you confront somebody on the issues of climate change, and it runs contrary to their belief, they become very angry about it, and it's a sort of fanaticism, if I may say so. So I think that Dr. Patrick Moore is onto something here, a true thing, because otherwise it wouldn't be. There would still be debate surrounding this issue and logic and so on, and that there's an element that's missing. So we will continue on with the conversation.
Of life, it is the foundation of all life. Is that hard to understand?
Well, it seems to be. I try to explain that to people, and I get blank stares and
yes,
outright hostility.
Because they have actually an ideology or a religious belief system that makes them reject even the basic truth that carbon dioxide is the most important food for life on Earth, along with water. Those two things are the most important. The problem is CO2 is invisible, but CNN lies. They put a picture of the smog in Beijing on the TV while talking about climate change and CO2.
Those are two different things.
They don't seem to think so. It was sort of like the headline during Fukushima, one of my favorite headlines, "Nuclear crisis deepens as bodies wash ashore." That was the headline. Now, the bodies were washing ashore from the tsunami.
From the tsunami,
yeah.
Yes.
But then I don't think the Fukushima nuclear plant caused the tsunami.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's how, so they're making it seem as though CO2 is responsible for the smog in Beijing, when actually it's particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, NOx, SOx, all these things.
And those all need to be addressed.
They do.
That's a real problem.
And the Chinese know that, The beauty of the situation is that a full third of the world's population, right between China and India. I think maybe they're at least a third of the world's population. They do not buy into this climate thing. They play along for the sake of optics, I guess you'd call it, political optics. In the same way that when Stephen Harper went to the Indonesia summit of the G7 last September, he agreed to a statement that said fossil fuels should be phased out by the end of the century. He's a conservative from Alberta, and he agreed to that. It's a world...
That makes me laugh. Stephen Harper, former Canadian Prime Minister of this country, there's a lot of controversy surrounding him, but I won't get into that. But again, when you're looking at the whole climate optics, it's true. And I don't know if most governments do it out of fear of negative publicity, but they do seem to play along with the whole grand narrative that the climate change needs to be addressed. So I think that there needs to be a very serious discussion about this to address this sort of fanaticism that lingers around climate change as a subject. Even without intending to, if I engage in a conversation with somebody about climate change, sometimes it can get extremely divisive and argumentative and very... It's a subject designed, at least from what I see, people don't really want to debate about it. It's a belief, not an idea anymore. It's away from scientific fact for starters, and evolved into a fanaticism. So let us continue.
That is headed in a really bad direction for the future of our children, and they're making it seem like the people who support energy are the ones who are going to drive us into extinction or oblivion. And the truth comes out when you say, okay, you're against fossil fuels. How do we replace them? With nuclear energy? No. With hydroelectric energy? No. Those are actually the only two other technologies that can produce large-scale continuous power. They say, no, we'll do it with wind and solar.
Well, the power demand over the next 30 years, the increase is going to be 2.5 times what we're consuming right now.
By 2100, it'll be 2.5 times what it is now.
Yeah.
And where are you going to get that energy? Obviously, nuclear energy is going to play a huge role in the future. China's building 100 nuclear plants. India's building 50. Russia's building 50. Vietnam's going nuclear. Saudi Arabia, with all its oil, is going nuclear. And they're doing it because it makes sense. Because it's clean, reliable, and in the long run, cost-effective. High capital cost up front, but it's like buying a Toyota versus buying whatever. You're going to have a car that goes 400,000 kilometers instead of one that only goes 2.
Yeah.
And that's the same with nuclear. And the gas will play an ever-increasing role.
I love your passion, but unfortunately I've got to take a quick commercial break here. We'll be back in a moment.
That Matter is a not-for-profit program. Visit COMP to produce this program.
So if on the environmental movement side these days, which you helped to create, but their fear is that the term I've heard is Climageddon, is the extinction of the world as we know it because we're going in this direction. What's your fear?
Well, my fear is that they will succeed in their agenda, which is to eliminate 98% of all the world's energy supply. And, you know, we don't just need food. That's our personal energy to keep our bodies running. But they're against so many things that we need in order to survive. And yet, at the same time, they're saying, if we don't stop using these things, we'll all die. That's not right. That is simply not correct. I mean, fossil fuels actually have contributed immensely to the wealth of this world, but they're against wealth. They actually, I don't know what their vision is, going back to hoeing your own weeds in your front yard or something in your little mud hut. You know, it seems to me that's where they're taking us if we listen to them. And so the hypocrisy of the situation is rampant. I've been tweeting, they want to put us in jail for being skeptical of the climate scam. I want to put them in jail for using fossil fuels. I want to catch them. I want to have an army of people going out and catching these guys using fossil fuels. Like Leonardo DiCaprio, it would take about 3 seconds to catch him, right? He should be tried and convicted of hypocrisy or something, because he's saying we should stop using fossil fuels with a 350-foot yacht and private jets. You know, I'm saying if people come into a fueling station, they should be asked. There should be someone there with a clipboard. Show your driver's license. Are you in favor of a pipeline and trucks bringing fuel to this service station? If they say no, they refuse service. Right? Just like that. Why not? I mean, how can we allow this rampant hypocrisy of 40,000 people flying into the largest private jet port in Europe at Paris and having a great big bash and partying and drinking all night and talking about how they're saving the world, and not one science subject comes up through the whole thing. It's all about how are we going to rip off people for $100 billion a year and give it to Mugabe, you know. He was the first one to apply for the climate fund because he says climate change has ruined the agriculture in his country, when in fact it was because he kicked out all the people who knew how to farm. So this is what's happening in the world today, and I don't like it, and that's why I'm fighting really hard to bring some sense to the situation. And my website is ecosense.me, M-E. I'm easy to find. I have papers and videos on these subjects I've been talking about, especially the CO2 issue. Prager University, if you Google Prager University, Patrick Moore, you'll find five-minute lectures that I did with them on a number of subjects, one of which is why I left Greenpeace, also on GMOs, CO2, climate, and trees. Trees Are the Answer is a book I wrote that I'm republishing now, because trees are so important to the future of this world, and yet, especially from the point of view of producing a renewable resource like this table, and basically the green movement is opposed to forestry. They like trees, they love trees, but they don't want them to be used. And so it's like they hate fossil fuels, so that's very straightforward, except they use them every day themselves in their daily lives. And they should be called out. Every second of the day they should be called out for the hypocrisy of not doing what they say. They say there's too many people, you know. Where's the lineup of those guys to go away? Why don't they go away if they think there's too many people and contribute to the cause, you know? And so
you are frustrated.
It's very frustrating to see such hypocrisy in the world where people are continuing to live a good life. Oil has produced our longevity, our prosperity, and our personal freedom. Now, what is wrong with those three things? Living longer, being wealthier, more prosperous. I mean, I'm not a profligate spender. I don't have a lot of money. I have a nice house. I have a lovely family. I have a good lifestyle. Is that evil? Apparently so. You know, I mean, there are people who go way over the top, like Leonardo DiCaprio, for example. He's got a stupid, lavish lifestyle. He could probably tone it down a hair, you know, and not spend $1 million a week or whatever he's doing. Yeah. But I really do believe that most of the environmental issues that are at the top, anti-nuclear, anti-GMO, the climate scare, Climate Inc. or Climate Incorporated, which is a huge convergence of interests among elites that is driving the political agenda today, which is totally misguided. I think actually we've done a pretty good job, and we need to keep refining it. I mean, sustainable development or sustainability is not an end game. It's about continuing to improve our relationship with nature and each other. And this is actually, the last 50 years has been the most peaceful period in the history of civilization for 2,000 years or more or whatever. People have been warring with each other all through history, and even though there's skirmishes and small wars, it's nothing compared to what it was for the whole history of civilization. So I have a huge amount of optimism for the future. I just wish people would stop telling our kids the world's coming to an end and that we're evil, that we're the enemies of nature. Is kind of like, that's where I departed Greenpeace. It was when the environmental movement turned from being humanitarian to stop nuclear war, to stop toxics in the environment, which were all dangerous to people, to becoming anti-human, basically, and saying that humans are the enemies of the earth. And I don't believe that. We're part of the earth.
So I very much appreciate and applaud Dr. Moore's position, which is a very humanistic position, empathy for mankind. We've made mistakes, it's true, but it was wrong of Greenpeace to go and become anti-human and pretend that humans are the disease, the reason for the fault and not the solution. Human beings are the solution, and we are the stewards and the keepers of this world. So we have a responsibility to look after what we've been given to look after. But that includes ourselves. So I look at Dr. Moore's position, and I very much agree with him. There's no lying there. This is a genuine article. Somebody that knew Greenpeace before the fanaticism and so on, and left for the moral idealism that human beings are worthwhile, that we're not the cause for all of this disaster. It's just more than that. We are the solution. So, and there is a lot of points that I enjoyed. For example, the hypocrisy of that part. Yes, I see that all the time. There's still people they as if they're very devout to climate change, but they still use the heat of their homes, their cars, their iPhones, anything, and everything is made in some way by petroleum. If you really want to prove yourself, then give up those things. I agree with Dr. Moore's conclusion entirely. The gas station ones, that was very amusing. That's as good a solution as any. If you really don't believe in the trucks to bring fuel to a gas station and the pipelines to put them through across the country, you are refused service, and that's the way it should be. Put your money where your mouth is, essentially. It's very simple. I feel a lot of these people are they're not leading by example. They are more like just becoming fanatics and focus on that ideology. And it doesn't matter whose lives they destroy. It's very simple for them, and it's a very hypocritical movement, I think. And, it may be based on good intentions like protecting the environment, but I believe that that's just a pretense to accomplish what they really wanted, and that's to make people poor. The whole idea that Dr. Moore put forward, that if we listen to the movement, we'll return to something approximating the Stone Age with little huts and tilling the ground, that is a ridiculous idea. That it's impossible to understate how empty that and how worthless that idea is. As though we are going to forget all our technology and advancements that we've accomplished and return to that. I am for being in harmony and balance with nature, and I think here in Canada we've achieved it. We have found a way. Even the oil sands, I looked at some of the other clips from Dr. Moore. When the oil sands move out, they replant trees, they put the area back to green space and so on, and it's very responsible how they handle it. And you could build a brand new ecosystem there again. It can be done. There is no need for people to insult the oil sands on their integrity. There's a high level of responsibility in Canada in order to protect the environment. Highly regulated, high safety standards, higher environmental conscientiousness. It's very, very responsible. And I believe that Canada is doing all it can. If anything, we should lead our example across the world. Canada is the forefront, not the lowest. Canada is at the top of environmental responsibility. And if you disagree with that, well, that's your opinion. But from where I stand, that is the truth. That's what I see. Patrick Moore is doing what he feels is right. This is a man that looks like that. He feels that his position is very necessary today to answer for the hypocrisy that's going on in this world, and we have a responsibility to do the same thing. It's not about I'm sure he lives a very peaceful life and so on. He may be already retired, but I think he make many personal sacrifices so that he can pursue what he believes in. And before that was Greenpeace, and after he left for because they started to become anti-humanistic, now this one he is addressing a threat to humanity. So it's much more than just about climate change. It's an attack on the dignity of human beings itself. So I greatly admire him. He very, very important, the stance that he's taking. So we must all do our part, because the fact that this climate change subject is something like a taboo in a lot of, at least a lot of the conversations that I've had. And it's becoming far too radical, and it's not based anymore in the ideals that that are at its origins. It's really becoming an intolerant movement, and I applaud Dr. Patrick Moore for the stance that he's taken, and I believe that he does everything in his power to try to inspire people in the truth and try to correct the presuppositions that they hold and the odd ideology that's plaguing our societies nowadays and seems to attack our way of life above all. Human dignity is always to be respected. It cannot be suppressed and it cannot be hidden. So I thank you for your time and your attention, and goodbye.